wasn't really looking forward to it that much in the sense that it was the last day. We already felt it was going to be difficult and awkward.
This is such an ironic way to...
I know, it's a very strange last show.
The Harry Potter films are worth watching over and over again. But even after dozens of rewatches, there is one moment that even the most obsessive of fans could have missed. Many would think that the films in this multi-million-dollar franchise are polished to perfection, with every frame being meticulously edited. But that magic might fall apart the moment you look a little closer. The blooper in question isn't that crazy of a mistake itself. It happens all the time. But what's strange is that the editors either completely missed it, or maybe they chose to keep it in as a little Easter egg for fans who like to pay a little more attention. Either way, once you realize what's happening, you'll never be able to unsee it. The Dueling Club disaster and more. The Harry Potter franchise has earned over $7.7 billion worldwide. After the massive success of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, the entire world was waiting with bated breath for the second film in the franchise that expands the lore of the wizarding world. The Dueling Club scene, of course, is one of the most iconic moments in the film, where Professor Gilderoy Lockhart makes Harry and Draco face off against one another, despite the fact that, they are second years. So anyway, Harry fires some sparks at Draco, and the Slytherin student is sent flying across the room. Snape, who is watching from a distance, rushes to pull Draco off the floor. Not before giving him a nasty look, though, but that's when you see it. If you look closely, that's when you spot a cameraman standing on the left side of the frame in full view. Now, you can't blame the poor guy for doing his job and filming the whole thing, surrounded by child actors. Fans didn't catch the blooper immediately, but once the screenshot hit Reddit, everything exploded. How could something this obvious slip through? Some theories point to long shooting days and strict time limits on child actors, which means that director Chris Columbus had to grab what he could before losing the kids to legal filming restrictions. Others claim the cameraman wasn't visible in the original 2002 theatrical version at all, and that modern widescreen releases expanded the frame, unintentionally revealing what was never meant to be seen. That doesn't take away from the fact that this might be one of the clearest production mistakes in the entire franchise, one that is available to watch on demand. Chris Columbus has actually gone on the record to talk about the strict labor laws they had to adhere to while working with these young actors. The laws limited the amount of time they could spend on set each day, which meant shooting schedules had to be tightly structured, leaving little room for mistakes or delays. On top of that, young actors often found it hard to stay focused for long stretches. According to Columbus, the children's natural energy and enthusiasm were a double-edged sword. They were easily distracted, often giggling or looking directly into the camera during takes, which led to multiple retakes and extended filming days. Not to mention that keeping the kids focused and in character was a hurdle in its own right. According to Chris, he had to be extremely patient with the child stars to pull the entire thing off. But despite everything, their enthusiasm is what kept everyone going. The youthful energy that the main trio brought to the screen is what made the franchise so special. Although Chris was dealing with a lot of challenges, he maintains that working with Daniel, Rupert, and Emma was a rewarding experience like no other. Their chemistry was as real as it gets, and the authenticity of their connection is what created genuine, heartwarming moments that defined the franchise. But this wasn't the only on-set slip that happened during the filming of Harry Potter, because while the cameraman was caught by accident, another famous Harry Potter mistake was happening right in front of the camera, caused not by an adult, but by one of the stars themselves. Can you ever imagine Hermione Granger making a mistake? The girl who memorized every spell, every rule, and every answer to every question. Hermione was the one character who always caught what other people missed. She fought trolls and corrected teachers and practically carried the Golden Trio on her back. And there's no denying that Emma Watson was the perfect performer to bring her to life. However, Watson is human at the end of the day, and that means she is bound to make mistakes. But this one is so unintentionally hilarious that you can't help but find her adorable, even though Watson herself is traumatized by it. The blooper takes the audience back to behind the scenes of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone and shows Watson accidentally sabotaging her own co-stars on camera. The scene takes place during a moment in Sorcerer's Stone where the three friends are talking to each other after realizing who Nicholas Flamel is. There's Daniel Radcliffe, who delivers his lines perfectly, and Rupert Grint reacts to them in true Ron Weasley fashion. Everything is normal until you focus on Hermione. Instead of staying in character, she is focused on quietly moving her mouth, repeating the boys' dialogue word for word, almost as if she has no idea that the cameras are rolling. At first glance, it looks like nothing more than an enthusiastic child memorizing her script. But this wasn't a one-off slip. Emma Watson later admitted that she did this constantly, to the point where director Chris Columbus had to stop entire scenes because Hermione kept mouthing everyone's lines. According to Emma, this small habit became so disruptive that she would ruin takes without even realizing it. And now that she looks back, she is absolutely horrified. The actress admitted that she was overdoing it because she loved the book so much and wanted to get everything exactly right, even the parts that didn't belong to her. While Watson's slip-ups were adorable and harmless, not every mistake on set could be explained away so easily. In fact, some of them were so big and so obvious that fans still argue about how they ended up in the final cut of these films that have practically redefined cinema itself. Sadly, the Harry Potter franchise is full of continuity errors that only the most eagle-eyed fans can spot. If you rewatch the early films closely, you'll notice something that people have been debating for years on the internet for years. Harry's lightning scar keeps moving. In Sorcerer's Stone, when Ron sees Harry's scar for the very first time on the Hogwarts Express, it appears on the right side of Harry's forehead. However, once the first film establishes that, in Prisoner of Azkaban, the scar suddenly starts appearing on the left side of his forehead in several scenes, including the one where Fred and George give Harry the Marauder's map and the iconic Boggart sequence. While the filmmakers haven't exactly explained this error, fans have tried to come up with theories of their own. Some have argued that it was a simple production error, while others have pointed out that certain scenes are mirrored shots that flip Harry's hair and scar. But even if that is true, it doesn't justify this big hole in continuity, especially for a franchise of this scale. Different makeup artists applied the scar slightly differently over dozens of filming days, and when the editors pieced together scenes filmed months apart, subtle shifts slipped right past the cutting room. Harry Potter's historical inaccuracies. But continuity mistakes are just scratching the surface. Because once you start looking at things from a critical lens, you notice tiny details that completely break the timeline, the logic, or the lore, and somehow still made it into the story. The biggest offender obviously comes in Prisoner of Azkaban, which is a film that defies all logic, even for a world full of magic. The time turner is one of the most important parts of the Prisoner of Azkaban narrative. There's no denying that it's one of the coolest magical objects in the entire series. The idea of a magical decide that lets you turn back time and make things right is great, and has the potential to serve as a brilliant plot device. However, it opens up a huge can of worms once it actually starts to play out. For starters, Dumbledore tells Harry and Hermione to be extremely careful and not let their past selves see their current selves. Then again, If time traveling were so dangerous, why would the Ministry of Magic allow a third-year student to use the time turner just so she could take 2 classes at once? And if using the time turner was so casual in the wizarding world, why did no one ever use it to stop Voldemort? Fans and analysts have called this out for years as one of the franchise's most confusing plot holes. But it only gets more complicated from here. Some argue that the time turner can't really change the past, only fulfill what already happened. A kind of closed loop where everything Harry and Hermione do to save Buckbeak was always part of the timeline. But that doesn't fully solve the problem because it still creates a universe where time travel exists, but is never mentioned again. Once you open that door, it's impossible not to question why the wizarding world closes it the second the plot no longer needs it. But if you think the time turner was confusing, the Thestrals take the debate to a whole new level. According to Order of the Phoenix, these strange skeletal, winged horses can only be seen by wizards who have truly witnessed death, not just been near it, but understood it. Harry first sees them at the beginning of the 5th film, right after Cedric Diggory dies in Goblet of Fire. That makes sense. Until you remember something important. That wasn't the first time Harry witnessed someone dying. For starters, he watched Voldemort kill his mother as a baby. But it can be argued that this happened when Harry couldn't comprehend death. He doesn't even remember watching his mom die in front of him, so that explanation holds up. Until it doesn't. In Sorcerer's Stone, Harry was 11 years old and knew what death was. That's when he watched Professor Quirrell die right in front of his eyes, knowing exactly what was happening because he led the man to turn to ash. So why did the Thestrals only show up in Year 5? You can make up 1,000 explanations for it, such as the one that says Cedric's death affected Harry emotionally enough to activate this ability to see the Thestrals. But since neither the films nor the movies actually ever explain it, it just ends up being a magical rule that is bent, depending on what the story needs. To be fair, though, Prisoner of Azkaban is full of plot holes that continue to baffle audiences to this day. And these aren't just tiny oversights. For example, Fred and George Weasley owned the Marauders map for years before giving it to Harry in Prisoner of Azkaban. The map shows everyone at Hogwarts by their real name, no matter their form or disguise. So how did the twins never notice Peter Pettigrew sleeping in Ron's bed every single night? In their own words, they memorized every corridor and every secret passage on the map, yet never noticed a grown man sharing a dorm with their own brother? How strange is that? The secrets that shaped the Harry Potter world. Stepping away from all these mistakes, there are plenty of things fans don't know about the Harry Potter franchise. These aren't bloopers, but they are behind-the-scenes stories that quietly shaped the films into what they became. Starting with the leading man himself. Not many fans know this, but Daniel Radcliffe almost wasn't in the rest of the Harry Potter films after The Sorcerer's Stone. According to Radcliffe, his parents actually turned down the role when he was just 10 years old. Not because they didn't believe in him, but because the original deal required him to film 6 movies in Los Angeles. For a kid that age, it would have completely uprooted his life. His parents decided that it would be too much disruption, and that Daniel would have to pass up on the role of a lifetime. Now, Chris Columbus, the director of Sorcerer's Stone, had seen Daniel's performance in David Copperfield, and he was convinced that this was the boy who would bring Harry to life. But sadly, Daniel's parents were not budging in any case. If things had stayed that way, we would have had an entirely different kid playing Harry Potter. And who knows if the dynamic of the Golden Trio would have remained the same or not. But thankfully, Daniel's parents' decision led to Warner Brothers making a small compromise that changed everything. They offered Daniel a deal to shoot 2 films and moved production to England at Leavesden Studios. The moment the contract shifted, Daniel's parents agreed to let him audition. And the rest was history. But that's not the only time the Harry Potter films almost changed forever. While Daniel Radcliffe came close to never becoming Harry Potter at all, something just as significant nearly happened several years later. Emma Watson almost walked away from the franchise entirely. This didn't happen early on, when the cast was still adjusting to fame. Instead, it surfaced right before Order of the Phoenix, a point in the story when the films themselves were growing darker, heavier, and more demanding. And according to the HBO Max reunion Return to Hogwarts, Watson was genuinely considering leaving her role as Hermione Granger right at the peak of her career. The special featured director David Yates, confirming that the pressure had started getting to Watson and she had reached a tipping point. Emma herself confessed in the special that when the film adaptation premiered in 2007, all that fame had finally started to sink in, and she thought that she would be seen as Hermione forever. The three co-stars reunited in the HBO Max special and talked about their own experiences of growing up with the world watching their every move, as stars of one of the biggest film franchises of all time. During the conversation, Emma shared that while Daniel and Rupert had each other to lean on, she often felt like she was navigating the experience alone. Since she was younger than most of the other cast members, she felt like she wasn't able to fit into a group, and as a young kid, that was more isolating than ever. Ultimately, Emma chose to continue playing Hermione without any kind of pressure or contractual obligations. She made the decision on her own and said that the support of her fans is what got her through this tough time. Emma wasn't alone in her doubts, though, because Rupert Grint had moments where he wanted to walk away too. While the actor never really acted on his actions, he admitted that, throughout the series, he wondered what his life could be like if he gave it all up. Rupert has opened up about the pressure of constant filming, followed by intense promotional work. He found all this work to be extremely consuming, and while he did have a lot of fun, he would often feel suffocated by everything on his plate. The actor is actually grateful for being able to take a break after the franchise came to an end, because he just needed a few years to process all these years of his life. Even though Grint faced this pressure, he remains incredibly grateful for the role that changed his life. He now acknowledges the lasting impact it has had on his career, and the fans who still remember him fondly as Ron Weasley. Daniel Radcliffe revealed that although all of them were struggling, they almost never discussed their anxieties with one another. As he put it, they were still teenagers trying to find their own way, and it never occurred to them that the rest would be feeling the same way too. Behind-the-scenes secrets. Return to Hogwarts was full of little tidbits that the cast sat down to reminisce about. And of course, that highly anticipated kiss between Ron and Hermione came into question. For years, the audience had been rooting for these two to grow up and realize their feelings for each other. So, by the time Deathly Hallows Part 2 premiered, fans were more than ready for the big moment. However, for Emma and Rupert, it was the most difficult scene they had ever filmed. The two actors admitted that the kiss was hard, not because of how emotional, intense, or technically complex the moment was, but because the idea of kissing each other felt so unnatural to them that they couldn't even act like it was okay. For the two young stars, who had grown up together from the ages of 9, 11, and 12, the relationship between Harry, Ron, and Hermione wasn't romantic. It was deeply sibling-like. Watson explained that the kiss felt wrong on every level because she, Grint, and Radcliffe were more like family than co-stars. Director David Yates recalled that preparing them for the scene felt like prepping them for a major sports event, and the pressure only increased because of the attention surrounding it, not just from fans, but from the cast and crew themselves. Watson joked that everyone wanted to be on set the day they filmed it, which only made things harder. Daniel Radcliffe didn't help matters either. In the reunion, he admitted he teased them relentlessly leading up to the scene and even told them he planned to come watch. Rupert Grint laughed at this, but Watson confessed the teasing made them even more self-conscious. Despite all the anxiety behind it, the moment ended up being surprisingly short to film. Watson and Grint both said the actual kiss lasted only a few seconds before they broke into laughter. It was awkward, emotional, and a little chaotic, but it ultimately delivered the payoff fans had been waiting for since the early books. What's most interesting, though, is how this one scene showed that by the end of the franchise, the actors were so deeply tied to their characters and to each other that separating themselves from the roles became genuinely difficult. Emma described the experience as an extreme form of method acting, not by choice, but because they grew up along with these characters. This meant that the young cast was navigating the ups and downs of growing up while playing these larger-than-life characters on set. And for many of them, this meant dealing with awkward teenage crushes. One of the most heartfelt revelations during the reunion came from Watson, once again, who admitted that she was definitely crushing on Tom Felton during the early years of filming. Turns out that the young actress fell for her co-star during a tutoring session on set, where each one of them was asked to draw their interpretation of God. In classic Draco fashion, Tom drew a girl wearing a backward cap on a skateboard. Watson said something about that drawing immediately captivated her, and she knew that she was in love with him, whatever it meant at her age. Watson was 10 around the time, while Felton was 12, and that age gap meant that Tom saw her a little differently. Felton said he always felt protective of her and described their bond as a kinship, something deeper than a crush, but never romantic. Their affection for each other remains obvious, even decades later. Nothing ever happened between them, but the mutual respect and warmth they share really is special. And the fact that they can laugh about Emma's crush years later just goes to show how strong their friendship is. It wasn't always like this, though, because according to Felton's 2022 memoir, Behind the Wand, the two co-stars got off to a rocky start during their auditions. After all, he and his co-star, Josh Herdman, who plays Gregory Goyle in the movies, ended up laughing at Emma while she was performing a dance routine. However, Felton eventually realized that as the youngest and only female cast member during their early years of filming, Emma was dealing with a lot. Now, he is grateful to have been able to recognize that before it was too late. But Emma wasn't the only one navigating all these emotions on set. In a moment that surprised nearly everyone, Daniel revealed that he once wrote an honest and heartfelt letter to none other than Bellatrix Lestrange. The young actor found himself captivated by Helena Bonham Carter when he started filming with her for the 5th film. In his letter, Daniel shared his admiration of the actress's craft and claimed that if he had been born earlier, he might have had a chance with her. Carter actually kept the sweet letter and brought it to the reunion to read out loud, expressing how much it means to her. This teenage awkwardness practically defined the on-set experience for a lot of the franchise's young actors, who would often start dating each other, then break up and move on like any other group of teens. According to Matthew Lewis, who played Neville Longbottom, the young actors were navigating some of their most formative years together, working on this life-changing series, and it was only natural for them to have feelings toward people that they were spending all these long hours shooting their scenes. This was especially happening during Goblet of Fire, with the entire cast entering their teenage. Radcliffe even admitted to having every single part of his life connected to Harry Potter. He revealed that his first kiss and first few girlfriends were all people he met on set, and while they never really went anywhere, he recalls this time fondly because it eventually shaped him to be the person he is today. In fact, during this time, Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson formed a special bond that only they knew of. The two actors became each other's dating gurus and would help each other navigate texting their crushes. They would analyze every message, overthink punctuation and emojis before responding back, after hours and hours of crafting the perfect response. Of course, some cast relationships actually did flourish and evolve into long-term romances. Bonnie Wright, who played Ginny Weasley, and Jamie Campbell Bower, who played a young Gellert Grindelwald, were engaged in the early 2010s after dating for a few years, and Evanna Lynch, the actress who brought Luna Lovegood to life, quietly dated Robbie Jarvis, who plays young James Potter, for nearly a decade. The untold struggles of the Harry Potter cast. Not everything was sunshine and rainbows behind the scenes, though, because ultimately, these were all child stars grappling with personal challenges and struggles while still having to show up and give their best on set every single day. Many fans might not know this, but Daniel was actually dealing with an internal struggle during the filming of the later films. The actor has admitted to battling alcoholism nearing the end of his run on Harry Potter. And while he has confirmed never drinking on set, he has confessed that he would show up to work drunk quite often. Despite all his success, Radcliffe faced moments of intense self-doubt that led him down this path, and all of his co-stars knew that he was not doing okay back then. Thankfully, he was able to snap out of it one morning when he decided to quit cold turkey and get sober. Since then, the actor has never looked back. For some of the other young stars, the pressure and fame led them down darker paths. Jamie Waylett, who played the character of Vincent Crabbe, found himself in serious trouble after the series ended. In 2011, Waylett was arrested and sentenced to 2 years in prison for his involvement in the London riots. He had been photographed holding a petrol canister, though he was later cleared of intending to damage property. But it wasn't just criminal charges that made headlines. The struggles of the Harry Potter cast extended to moments of public frustration as well. Joshua Herdman, who played the role of Gregory Goyle, became embroiled in a nasty Instagram rant in 2018 when he lashed out at a fan. The actor, who later transitioned into an MMA fighter, called the fan a loser and used explicit language in his messages, which led to an upset fan dumping his Harry Potter box set. There was also a growing sense of exhaustion as these actors worked tirelessly year after year. The child extras, often seen in the background of Hogwarts scenes, also faced grueling hours on set. Samantha Clinch, who appeared in the third and fourth films, revealed that child extras were paid as little as £35 a day, which works out to roughly £3 an hour. The life of an extra at Hogwarts wasn't as magical as it seemed. In a TikTok video that has now been deleted, Samantha revealed the grind of long hours and strict guidelines that were part of the daily routine for child extras. For one, there was a mandatory 5 hours of schooling every day, Samantha explained. Between shots, the cast would be quickly whisked away to their trailers for classes, where a siren would signal the transition. She reminisced about the strange routine, where at times it felt more like a military drill than a film set. The rules didn't end with school, though. One of the first things extras had to do upon entering the trailers was remove their Hogwarts cloaks. According to Samantha, this was primarily to avoid any potential stains or damage from the ink, as the cloaks were quite heavy. These practical steps were just the beginning of the strict rules they had to follow. Extras were told in no uncertain terms that they were not allowed to take any items from the set. Samantha shared an anecdote about a boy who had pocketed a fork and then was never allowed back again. Despite the strict rules and long hours, the bonds formed among the extras, the excitement of being on a set that felt like home, and the opportunity to be part of something as culturally significant as Harry Potter made it all worthwhile. The Harry Potter series continues to spread its magic across generations. especially with HBO gearing up for a TV adaptation of J.K. Rowling's beloved novels. However, even then, the magic of the original film franchise is bound to remain unmatched. Despite all their errors and plot holes, the Harry Potter films hold a special place in pop culture history. What do you think about the bloopers we just talked about? Did you notice them? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.